Welcome, Michael here at Wickerson Studios, playing around with the Python in the ghPython node in Grasshopper, and I think this is really where you want to make a shift away from Visual Studio Code or Jupyter Notebooks to actually applying those scripts. And when they get interesting enough at the beginner level, you're going to find probably Book 2, Chapter 2 is the beginning of controlling for loops and while loops. And what I would suggest is getting the files off of line. I mean, you can have a visualization tool here if you need it, but I don't think you need anything outside of top view to start with. And you don't need to put anything in the Rhino to begin, but you probably want to open the file, the AIO Python Book 2, Chapter 2, and read through a little bit of the guidelines of what I have in here. So a lot of information coming in out of the textbook, but then you'll see the application of actually a script. And I've done an if statement that's pretty simple, that if you put the text on something or you take it off, you've got a statement to play with. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to save document as probably, test, and just call it that, which should be enough to start. And that will give us a test document to play around with. So the first file, if you take a look at it, you can jump into it, you can copy it because it doesn't produce any geometry. But you see, like, where could I apply it? Where could I take that script and actually play? So it might be nice to have a little playground area down here. So a little scribble tool, and we'll take that up to full size and call it play sandbox. Nice way to begin. I think that'll be a nice way to do it. Make it one word just for fun. Now let's call it sandbox. All right. So that's something to play with. So you have your script down in there. Now, what would you do with that? What would you? Obviously, the script itself is not producing anything too interesting, but if you open it up and have a look, it basically is a total, which is an input number, a sales tag, which is a percentage. And if you think about it, you're just taking a number and you're either deciding to scale it or not. So it's not hard to think of that as those numbers. You don't have to change everything, but there's an opportunity to have the total number. So we'll call this total in because it's an input. Sales tax percentage scale in, and just this is just and then what is taxable is true or false, which is a Boolean. So that's going to be, that's already a variable that's there. And then we could output some data here. And it doesn't really matter what we output, but let's output, I don't know, let's just call total out. And let's give that the value of total in the end. So you're really, you're seeing what's coming in as total in and total out. And let's end up seeing if this actually works as a script. I have a little problem here. Name is not defined. So let's go into the script and let's add two things. Let's add the total as an integer just to think about it. So this is getting things up and running. Let's call this total in. That's not what I want to call the statement. I want to call, total in. We want to make that an integer value, and there we go. And we'll make this integer value anywhere slider from 1 to 100 fairly quickly. And then let's have a scale in, and we could just call it scale, but we'll call it scale in. And then you've got your total, your sales tax rate, which is actually the scale in. We'll have a percentage of 1.00, and maybe we'll take that scale. I think that'll be fine. The scale in there. And now you have a scale on a number. As it comes through, you can see that we can actually take that scale number as a factor and push that into adding exactly the scale to it. So what we end up having is total, because we're printing, we're actually printing the total. I have to be careful with this. We actually want to print the total as the equation. And I knew something was there. It was kind of inkling in the back of my head, and that's what you have to think about. So let's have that out. Total out is going to equal that. Let's run it again, and let's put in our output variable total out. And that's it. And now we can actually have not just a print statement that generates something, but we actually have an output. and we've made a script. Now if I run it, should be good. There we go, 36. So I have, without a Boolean to take off the scale, to put on the scale true or false, to scale accordingly down to what it was and all the way up, and then to here. So if you think about this, this is a tool that can drive with Python, a script that you've customized, and you can change the names and inputs to understand it. But because you're outputting a number and not just a print statement, why not jump back into curves, get yourself something like a circle, throw it in a radius, and just for fun, let's downsize all this because it's a little too huge. Let's go into our standard zoom extends all. There's our circle, and let's have a little fun with that. Let's take a circle at that range, and just to do something iterative, let's take curves division and divide the curve. Let's reparameterize the curve like we used to. I'm going to move that. Reparameterize the curve. The count is actually 10, but we can put it in another number slider because we're familiar with working in. You see those points? And then we can generate another circle that actually goes on those points, but actually it's kind of a range. We can play a little bit around with actually a range tool without having to script it, because you may be familiar or used to using this. So if we grab that range output of the domain and then put that into the radius, you can see that with a graph is going to produce a very interesting geometry that we can choose how many we want to put into it. And you're getting your head around that's off, that's on, that's our scale factor. And it's a big way around nothing. You don't really need to do it, but you can build very simple geometric scripts that you're still working with in Grasshopper, and you're playing around with a little bit of a Python script to understand how to write it. And then I would change these names so they're more sensible instead of total and sales tax number and total with totaled out. But you're getting your head around some very simple if statements, which is basically what's happening, and they will get more complex as we go. So that's a little sandbox to have some activity in. You can just pop that little sandbox up there. You can group it. You can take the whole thing if you want and put it to disable, and you're ready to go with another script. And so you're going to go then farther into else in your logic, and you're going to jump in here. And what have I done different in here? I've brought in the else statement, if else, and because I'm using if else 2 and 3, I think I'll just say that this is introducing else. And we'll just start with that and put that over. So a little bit to consider else. And then that script's written a little different. And as it gets more and more complex, take the script that you find interesting. This is one about having a beer or not. If else statement. Grab that, copy it, pull it down into your sandbox down here, and play around with that script and see if you can drive some other geometries through it. So I'm going to begin with that to start. We'll start considering this as a script, what we'll end up doing. And I'll kind of pitter through here and try and start applying some of this stuff that I'm working in as we continue through learning Python in Grasshopper. Thanks very much for watching.